When the credits start rolling, but the movie keeps haunting you.
Before, after.
Then it's time to tune in to Dismembering Horror. We'll talk about what worked and also what didn't. We'll dissect every aspect. Maybe some that we shouldn't.
They turned out to be completely unreliable assholes.
Take it away, boys.
All right. Hello, Tim.
Hello, Ryan.
And hello, everyone joining us today. Thanks for being here. Here, as you probably have seen and heard by now, here is Dismembering Horror, and specifically today to episode 202 of Dismembering Horror, where today we are going to be giving our patented dismemberment on Cure from 1997. Cure, directed by and written by one and the same Kiyoshi Kurosawa. Had you heard of this film before?
No.
All right.
No, I have not.
You had not.
I had not either.
Cool.
I still haven't.
Oh, short-term memory loss there?
Yeah.
Yes, I had heard of it. I had seen the director's film. Now, again, our memory loss. Pulse, which I recommend. Is good. Made a handful of years later.
Wait, did we do Pulse?
We did not do Pulse.
I think I've seen Pulse.
It's like creepy, like Ghost in the Machine, early internet stuff.
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to look it up.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I was excited to see what else he's done. Certainly a master of mood, which we'll get into here. Anything else before we settle in with the trailer?
No. Just a thanks to Peter for last episode.
For Scream 6.
Yeah.
Scream VI. Shout out. Hope you're watching, Peter. Check it out if you haven't. We're, as long as they keep making Scream movies, we will keep dismembering them.
I just hope he felt comfortable in this abode.
Yeah, our first guest here in our abode, in our studios, Dismembering Horror Studios. Our
studios.
It worked out great that you had this basement here. I mean,
I know, yeah.
Making no use
really
of it.
Rare basement in LA. You know?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Happy it worked out.
It came decorated too, like this.
Yeah, looks great. Why weren't we using this the whole time?
I don't
know. Okay, let's watch the trailer for Cure, and then we'll get into it. Here we go. As I said, from 1997, Cure.
Whoa.
All right, Cure. So, after the trailer, we like to rate the films we have viewed. Would we tell ourselves, talking to ourselves, to avoid, stream, rent, or buy Cure?
Why don't you go first, Ryan?
Ooh, I don't know. I think it's a good enough movie to be a buy for sure. But I don't know. I was just feeling more rent it, like maybe not one of my immediate all-time favorites. It takes I've mentioned this before, the whole like investigative detective genre,
which I tend to love.
Which you love. I do love, but will not be my favorites usually. But something like this is just so up my alley at the same time. I'm feeling conservative today, Tim. I'll say rent for now. maybe I feel like, when we're checking up in episode 300, if it's one of my favorites, then maybe I'll have bought it. It's one that I almost did buy today, actually. I almost literally bought it today, seeing that the Criterion flash sale was going on. And I just really wanted to show it to Terrence, my director of photography. Like, this is it, man. You see this mood here? But then I realized I'll just give him my Criterion Channel login. So that's where I landed on that.
Don't say that in public. It's illegal.
And it's great. Actually, probably maybe another reason why they had all like, on Criterion Channel, they'll have full editions available, meaning all the special features that come on the disc anyways.
Which is great.
Yeah. So I was able to do that. So just for those little reasons, I don't know. Somewhere between there for now, could regret it later. I'll say rent it.
Oh, I had a really hard time getting into this. And like, typically I love this genre, I guess. And yet, I don't know what it is. Maybe we'll figure it out as we continue to talk about it. But I just, it never arrived in a place that I was like, yeah, this is my thing. And so I just can't be anything but a stream. I think it's good. And like, I didn't not enjoy it. I just never got into it for some reason. So I don't know exactly what was lacking. I mean, there's some really, obviously, like you're saying, the mood, filming. I guess it may just be a story thing that just like there's just something missing. So I'm just a stream.
All right.
Yeah.
Well then, to give a semi-enthusiastic summary, maybe would you be down for that?
Sure. You got a detective. It's a detective story.
I got all their names here. Takabe.
He is married to a woman who has had. Maybe this is my issue: is that I felt like I missed something, but maybe it just was never explained.
Yeah.
Why is his wife in the state that she's in? Which seems like either like an accident happened, or because it seems new. She has some sort of condition where she's just sort of out of it. And like she seems confused all the time.
And possibly has telekinetic powers.
Yeah, which... Sure.
All that's in the opening.
Right. And but do we don't get an answer.
No. We don't know exactly what's going on with her.
Okay, so he's married to this woman who's suffering from some sort of condition. A series of murders starts up, and the MO of the murderer is is to kill the person, the victim, by slashing an X through right underneath their throat, essentially. Sort of their like Adam's apple, I guess. And then they bleed to death. So the weirdness of the case revolves around the fact that all of the perpetrators of the killings are there in some form or another and have no real memory of like why they did it. They're in sort of a trance-like state, and they also don't. Their memory is spotty enough that they're sort of in shock and are like, "Did I, like?"
Well, I got that it wasn't that their memory was shoddy, but their motivation was any sort of like
right.
They
Why'd you do it? I don't know.
They were just compelled to and found themselves doing it.
And so, what the detective and his psychiatrist sort of partner are trying to deduce is like, is there somebody else involved that's like compelling these people to do what they're doing? And the answer is yeah. And we meet that dude, and
Mamiya.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that seems right. He's not really the perpetrator, but he's the criminal,
the villain. Yeah, he's the criminal, not so mastermind.
Yeah, And his whole thing is essentially to hypnotize people into doing things. The motive is a little vague to me. Maybe it's not to you. And then the detective kind of spirals. He gets semi-mesmerized. We'll talk about the mesmer connection.
I think the detective's spiraling could maybe, in the quest for meaning or explanation, is somewhat mirroring your questioning of why the killer may have been killing.
Yes. There's a kind of, I think, a potentially interesting commentary or attempted commentary. I'm not sure if it was... Well, I'm not sure how deep they were trying to go with it, but I think there's some commentary on like society.
Oh, I think this went so deep.
Okay, good. But it ends up that the detective kind of loses his shit, and well, I don't know. Is it clear? I think it's I think the ending is unclear, purposefully.
Yes. Right. As far as...
So we don't know if he's in a hypnosis state or not.
Or that he may be the new one hypnotizing people. Because
right.
It ends where we are speaking today as if you have seen the film. It's the first time joining us. We're just here. You're in our room. We just watched a movie. You're here with us. That's the spirit. Anyway, yeah, so... Telltale ending. He's at the coffee shop restaurant place.
Right.
Yeah, it is both of those. He goes from finishing a steak to getting served a coffee. And the waiter, she picks up a knife in a way that seems suspect, but cuts out soon enough that maybe it's not.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I think it's pretty suspect.
Yeah. Well, it's suspect, but
she picks up like a butcher knife and it's like...
Right. But as far as if she actually does something.
Correct. We don't find out. So, in spite of him getting, killing the villain, the hypnotizer, it's unclear whether or not, really to me, it's left open-ended whether or not anything from his angle happened. Or are we just in his head?
Well, yeah, I could
Or are we in his wife's head?
Right. I think we could kind of clarify, almost like audition in a bit. The last chunk, third or so, we sort of get into that unreliable narrator territory.
Totally.
There's something, he hallucinates that his wife has hung herself when she's just there, doing dishes or something. And they go on when they're riding like a bus together and sitting in the back of it. It seems like dreamscapey.
Exactly.
In the background.
And he returns to that bus by himself toward the end. And that's where I started to go, I don't think we can say what reality has been from a certain point on.
Because, he has actually, it's a big, great long take scene where he doesn't fall under the spell of Mamiya's normal lighter technique for hypnotizing people, but possibly falls for the puddle technique.
Right. Okay, that's a pretty vague.
That's what
that is what the movie is, though.
Yeah, and this is just to get us all on the same page here, whether you've seen it or not.
Yeah, there's 6 or so murders.
Yeah,
they're all pretty unique to themselves, and in the same, MO of the cutting of the neck.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to take out the person first before cutting the X in their neck, each of those has its own vibe to them, which is cool.
Yes, unique to their situation.
Yeah.
Like the cop shooting the other cop outside on a sunny day.
That's right.
Okay.
Just going for it.
Great. There's our summary. I think we can move on to our next big section here. Let's see. Let's accentuate the positive a bit. Here we go. What worked?
What worked? What worked for you? What worked for you? What worked for you?
It worked like a charm, Smith.
What worked? What worked for you?
I didn't say up front what I really loved about the film, which, I mentioned mood and all that. I did love that. So as far as top tier then, the story, it was just one of those great what ifs or premises that just sent me, to use the word again, spiraling in the best of ways, of just all the loaded meaning behind identity, our own identity, and how we try to pinpoint others based on their sort of context in history, who they are, all that jazz. That just went so many layers deep. I just was so into that. I mean, it was great because you have like, I do get why the detective story was perfect for this, because you have this whole time, the police force, it's a whole large group of men trying to figure this all out, right? And they try to understand things like just with the basics. Who are you? Then you have the dude that can't answer that. Why did you do that? I don't know. All that. And you can't even remember that he did it at all. So you can't even give them a where or anything like that. So just, it's so fascinating to have that sort of, whatever that logic is, that way of thinking, that's very predominant societal way of thinking, applied to someone who's just so in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting effect, because both the sort of the victims of the hypnosis who then commit the crimes, and Mamiya as well, exhibit this thing that it completely reduces the interrogation to like pointlessness, which I think is a really, like, if you start to think about what that even means, right? The authority has a tactic as to how to, come to some conclusion.
They can't even torture it out of these people.
Exactly. And so that they've been completely cut off at the knees, or made impotent in that sense,
right,
from that authoritarian tactic or like methodology. And they also are kind of, I think that big theme of like helplessness is like throughout in a lot of different ways. And it's like helplessness in the face of authority, or in the face of certitude. Because like the psychiatrist doctor keeps saying shit like, no, it's impossible. And it's like, what do you mean it's impossible? Like, what's impossible? Hypnosis? Well, no, it's not. Like, we know it's a thing.
Well, they establish when he's asking the other detective doctor guy about hypnosis, he's told that it normally one holds their moral code when still under hypnosis.
Right. So therefore, we can conclude that it's impossible that hypnosis is the trick that's causing this, which is, again, it's just this certitude attitude of like the authority being like, no, we know best, so therefore.
Well, that's what was so fascinating, was that moral question of like, okay, so the main dude, you can kind of buy that because he's such a threat, we can, I don't know, it feels right to like, we could justify arresting him, even though he doesn't traditionally have that kind of culpability. But as far as those individual Mamiya's victims, who are the perpetrators under hypnosis of the individual killings, like, how that's where that gray area is of like, it doesn't feel like you, like, clearly the husband is ruined by the fact he just killed his significant other. He didn't want to, he didn't mean to. So
why did he?
Right. And nor was it his intent to. Someone else in the end made him.
Right. It's inciting this.
So just in terms of like identity and how we identify, we have the him that is that him did not kill her, but we do have his but his body and his actions at the time killed her.
The him that's not the him?
The him that is the him.
The him that is the him. The him that is the him. What? What do you mean?
the him that is the... You, Tim, all your beliefs that you do identify with.
Yes.
If you had killed someone like that,
under this hypnosis state.
I wouldn't say that would be fair that was Tim.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I get what you're saying.
But your body did.
That's right.
And
this is interesting because it's sort of a form of autonomy being lost, which is also, I think, related to this other theme or this bigger theme of like authority. It's like the agency that is presumed by us having even an identity or whatever is being taken away.
Yeah.
And that's a really scary thing.
And it's the only mode that these cop people know how to exist in.
Yeah, they're the most sort of like living within these the rules of very black and white, or attempting to.
Right. Which this detective was so perfect for all that, because he's like can suddenly just turn hot-headed. But we see he kind of succeeds the most when he's just treating it as it is. He's not getting super triggered by when Mamiya forgets something he just, said. He's able to do the most once he sort of slips into accepting that.
He says specifically, I have been trained to not have emotion, even with the people closest to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's an interesting commentary too, because it's like it's another version of stripping away a form of agency, right? To say I cannot have emotion as a human being is wild, right?
But
like we do,
but what
regardless.
what he means and what he demonstrates by that is he interprets that, or is only able to. He's not able to actually do that. He can only act like he doesn't have emotion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a fallacy that he's told himself.
Yet, so this is where it gets into like interesting, like spiritual terms, I guess. If just the idea of be here now, be present, be in the moment, all that jazz. Then we have the actual, the bad guy of the story, Mamiya, who is completely calm and centered the whole movie. When we first meet him, he's just like enjoying the beach,
Yeah.
and he doesn't even know how he got there, but he's never fazed by any of this.
Okay, wait, this brings up, I think, an important take on the movie. Does he not know who he is? Does he not? Is he also in some sort of trance-like state this whole time? Or, which I think that's a scary take on it, but a scarier take to me is the thing we've talked about before, where like no matter what anybody says or does, he's fully psychotically aware of what he's doing and is just playing this game with everyone.
Oh, like actually like lying about his short-term memory loss?
Totally. Even though the doctors are like, no, he for sure doesn't remember anything. Like, I don't buy that take. I don't buy that they could come to that conclusion accurately. Like like my feeling was he knows exactly what he's doing. He is a master at this manipulation, and all of what he says is a part of the manipulation. So therefore, he knows exactly what he's doing. Otherwise, he couldn't. If it's like saying, does the guy who beats the chess master at chess, is he just a lucky idiot, or is he also a chess master?
That's the thing. It's kind of like there's no rules for how this works as far as how much of his previous tendencies are still a part of him. So, but I definitely took my kind of read on it was that he was college student, super into this weird stuff. Maybe started killing people, then maybe not. But because I forget if they say when these killings started. But
it feels like this is the first, like the movie is when the killings start.
So the time frame that we have is 6 months previously was the last time his landlord had seen him.
Right.
He had paid a year in advance for his rent. And also 6 months ago was when he got that big burn on his back. So I think the burn triggered his state.
Oh, that's interesting. So what's the implication of that, if there is one?
It's that he lost. Wait.
Like, why would what about getting burnt like that would put him into this mentality, I guess.
I mean,
if there is an answer to that, like, can we deduce?
I don't
something?
think it's important. I don't know. It's just something that's
But like,
there.
I wondered about that. I was like, what's the significance of this big burn he has on his back? And I don't feel like I ever got.
I just feel
something.
like it would just get like, it's not more than what I just said, or is just a clue that around this time something intense happened. Maybe that somehow triggered this thing.
Well, I do think it's interesting that there may be some connection to the fact that he uses fire specifically as his main mode of hypnosis. So maybe there's something in there. I don't know. We don't really get anything to tell us.
I thought you just seeing the images, I mean, such great imagery in this, but just like using the lighter to look at his old books on mesmer and hypnotism.
Did like that.
I thought of you there.
I really love the visuals. Like,
Yeah.
I love the style of it. It's doing that. I'm sure there's a term for this, but it's like there's sort of almost like a brutalist feeling to it.
Yeah.
Everything's really gray and really like cement.
Even
feeling.
even any like sunny
Concrete.
moments or shots still feel that way.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's this. It's not sterile. It's more stark and brutal, and like.
Oh yeah, and
I love that.
How that extends to the sound design too of the laundry, the washer. That's just this like droll. The carts getting, metal carts getting pushed down metal walkways in the hospital. All sorts of just elevators.
Well, it's all of these, like, the visuals and the sound are all like keying us into this construct of what can hypnotize us.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because we have just the sort of sheer mood visuals and sounds of, whether it's like the weather, the mummified monkey. I love the old, not even what's the older phonograph, the wax cylinder in the drippy room. And then you have, yes, like you just said, the actual, the elements in the film that act as their own hypnotism, like on us.
Dude, there is an amazing transition moment. I believe, let me think about this. So it's when the detective, they've moved Mamiya to like a hospital wing rather than keeping him in the jail. And that cell/room that he has is very, it's like a really interesting mix of feeling like a prison cell, but also having just enough accommodation. Like, it has a second room. It has like a bathroom. And like, it's got these two little windows, like rectangle windows. And there's a moment, I wish I knew exactly what they were talking about, but there's a moment when the whole tone shifts in the scene and like the lighting changes. It sort of flattens out and becomes a little bit darker. And then rain starts outside. So you realize like the effect they're going for is that that a storm rolled in and the lighting changes as it does, just subtly.
And that's when it puts out the lighter.
Eventually we get to that at the end of that scene. But that transition is really subtle. And it's so eerie and beautiful. Because I almost at first thought, I was like, oh, damn it, my TV is like going to sleep or something. You know what I mean? I was like, wait, is that a problem? Like, I was also having like internet connection problems when I watched this. Is like cut out twice, which is really annoying, like interrupted the movie. So I was like, oh shit, it's happening again. And then I was like, oh no, this is the scene. Like once the rain started, I was like, oh, this is very purposeful. But the mood shifting that exists in the movie is really cool.
Oh yeah, you even have just more like on-screen obvious, like at the beginning when Takabe, he's always second guessing their names, Takabe and Mamiya, when he has Mamiya right after he first finds him in his like little, is it like the closet, like some other like little room, and Mamiya's huddled down there in the corner, and he like turns the light. Yeah, I think he's in shadow at first, and then turns the light on, and then you have exactly what you're talking about. Super. I mean, it sounds so lame saying it. He turned on a light, but like it does that mood shift just so much, especially when you just have these long takes where you really getting used to this claustrophobic space. But then so much stuff with the sound and the visuals acting in that hypnotic way too, where like even at the beginning of that trailer that we just watched, where in that shot he's just staring at a distant, it must be like airplane tower or something like that. You know, it's just flashing lights, all these metronomic imagery, like super quick one when he's outside of the not laundry, the cleaners, and you see on the left side of the cleaners super quick there's like a metronome device going. What else you have? Oh, and then just all kinds of just cross lights, the flickering lights in the tunnel, and he gets caught up staring at them too, as we do as well. And then on top of that, just how it's edited with these sometimes where it just feels a little too quick when it cuts out, or the memories that come in have this like
flashes of like inside the brain stuff. Yeah, it feels like that. Inside the mind, I guess.
God, I love
that. Is really like startling. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's one in particular that I was like, we've gotten to a point in the movie where I'm like, I don't even know whose mind we're in anymore. Which I think is good.
Yeah.
Because we kind of get to the third act and it's just like, who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? Like, it doesn't even really matter anymore.
Yeah. But what works so well though, is you still have this thrust of detective getting mad at killer dude. And, you know, he's solving the case all along the way. Like there's still...
It's so bleak though.
Yeah.
God damn. I mean, it just really is like, this was an era of movies that like the late 90s, pre 9/11.
Yeah.
There was this whole sort of, I would call it almost its own subgenre of movies that were just super, super bleak. Like,
I feel like we got to mention Seven.
100%. Like even Fight Club, like that the another Fincher, that the main character, by virtue of going through this thing, it's completely pointless. Like life is like, they're not gonna win, right? That the ending is that they've either failed or they've actualized the worst part of themselves.
Yeah, well,
or they've given into the sort of darker shadow side of themselves. And like, maybe they accomplished the goal, like they killed the killer. But that even feels bad. Well, it feels like, I don't want to say anti-heroes, but it's like the heroic, it's like the antithesis to a heroic character.
Right. I mean, it doesn't feel like he did win. Exactly.
Right.
Or when he shoots him. I mean, my read on it, what I got out of it is it felt like he was just so, I mean, we see this throughout the film. He gets so frustrated by, like, he just wants to shake the guy by the neck and say, like, just remember, just tell me. Yeah. It's his frustration at this, I think, difference of philosophies. The like, give me your identity based on all that we talked about. Everything.
How dare you not abide by the rules of society?
Yeah, it's that frustration of like, you can't just be totally non-existent in the present moment to moment. That is what caused him. And then it's so great when he shoots him because he's this guy, Mamiya, he's built up such this like Hannibal Lecter just kind of presence and allure. Almost seems otherworldly, supernatural. And we do have these like glimmers of supernatural stuff popping into the film. Yeah, so when we have Takabe shoots him, it's just like there's something, I don't, he just,
it's overkill.
Yeah, he dies.
It's hardcore overkill.
He dies just like a regular person.
He shoots him in the head like 7 times.
He shoots him a few times, then he's lying there. That really
it's like,
just goes for it.
Dude's dead. Like. I don't know what good this is doing, but I think that what Takabe thinks it's doing is he has to overkill this dude because of the maybe magic or the maybe like the unnaturalness of all of it.
I just saw this is that venting the frustration. That's the same frustration when he threw the coffee at him through the window.
So good. It's so good. I think that. Yeah, so the psychologist, I thought it was a psychiatrist, Sakuma, is this really cool counterpoint to all of this too, because he, in the same, he's like the other side of the coin of the authoritarianism of the police, even though he's part of that system. He's constantly trying to put Takabe in check and being like, no, don't go, like, don't go full force like you usually do, or like cops usually do. Like, give the guy a break. And this notion of like, give the guy a break like he's sick in this circumstance is that much more maddening, because you're like, why are you giving this guy allowances? Like, we know that he's the culprit. Like, we know that he's killing people. And it's such a twisted logic because he's not killing people. Right? So it's like the psychologist is right, but also feels wrong.
Yep.
And that, again, it's like pushing us into this realm of just like totally futile helplessness. You cannot combat this type of bad guy
using their typical methods.
Right. Like, how do you win? You don't win. And furthermore, what does winning mean?
Right.
And so it's just like, it's such a gnarly like way. And I think maybe this is this era, there was this nihilistic sort of undertone to a lot of these stories.
Yeah. Well, it's exposing something, I think, on a really deep level about our justice system, and that it makes no sense.
Yeah. Well, but also the time that we were living in.
Mm-hmm.
We pre 9/11, the 80s and 90s in general, for the non-marginalized communities, was considered this like boon of just like getting to live life, and crime's down and wars aren't really happening in the way that they used to, and like everything's great.
The suburbia bubble. Exactly.
And it was all bullshit, right? In a lot of like it was only great for certain people.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this type of story started getting told more and more in that era, is that in the same way that, remember in Norway, I think it was, there were all these killings by like kids who got into black metal. And when they talked to the people who were killing people, their reasoning a lot of the time was insufficient, like for us. Like, we were like, that can't be why you're doing this. But they would say stuff like, well, we were just so bored. Like, there's nothing going on. Life was too sort of whatever and easy,
this was all
good.
Coming back, talking about Scream, the original.
Absolutely. Exactly. Right. Which was this year too, same year. So there's certainly was this thing in storytelling going on. I think, and storytelling by virtue of what was going on in society or in the world at the time. So it's really cool. It's tapping into that.
Yeah.
It's maddening though.
Yeah.
Right? To watch somebody just be like circular talking forever.
Well, what's so great is it's not just, like what you're saying, like that, and what we were saying earlier about how maddening it is, how crazy it drives him. But we also have where Mamiya is he's doing more than just being that present, forgetful self. He's actually he antagonizes Takabe and some of the other detective figures at the same time.
Totally.
Via like getting at their sense of identity. Like, while he is this like calm Buddha state,
they're like, who
I'm
are you?
no
And
one.
then he's like, who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me about yourself.
Right.
Like,
Well,
can
and then
you
when he's-
imagine trying to have a conversation with this dude?
That's what he's saying when he's in like the room getting interrogated by like all the high tier cop guys. That's what he says to one of them.
Yeah.
But then to Kabe, when they're alone, he tells him, remember he gives him that speech, it's like, you are neither the husband nor the detective. And that's what really gets to Kabe, like under his skin.
Yep. Yeah. He puts it out there to him that Takabe has no identity either.
Yeah.
And he's like, fuck you. Like, how dare you say something like that? Of course I do.
Well, he wouldn't be that upset if there wasn't some element of truth to there.
Exactly.
It's so
Yeah,
fascinating.
because I think, again, it comes back to this sort of notion of losing your agency or perception of agency, right? Like, he doesn't get to have the traditional life in marriage that he wants or that society wants or whatever defines. And he feels burdened by it. He uses, the translation uses the term burdened. Like, she is a burden to me. And the moment he actually like speaks that, he loses his shit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like he's confessing a thing and that this fucking guy got him to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And he just loses it. And it's so good. I have to say, like, I know I've seen this actor in a couple things. He's so good.
The main guy, Takabe?
Yeah, so I think it's a really hard thing to not overact trauma in you know, like to overperform when you're having to do a scene where it's like traumatic. His performance of walking in on his wife having hung herself, even though she didn't really, it's in his head. But the performance there, I was like, oh yeah, that's correct. That's how a human being would react. Like, he's like pulling at his face, going like silent screaming, like almost choking on it. It's so good. It's not over the top. It's not like, I mean, it's just doing the thing that, like, I was like, oh God, here we go. I mean, it's another moment where I'm like, this is too real. Well, like, it's perfect, but it's making me want to like barf or something because it's so real.
It's like, so that actor is Koji Yakusho, and it's why like the guy playing Mamiya, Masato Hagiwara, is he's the perfect foil to him, because I don't think Mamiya, even if he was someone who had a loved one and you know walked in, I don't think his reaction would be quite the same.
No, he'd be like, yeah, okay.
He might do some kind of breakdown. I don't know. It'd be different. Basically, I'm getting at the very different personalities. Yeah. And on top of those very different personalities and just their essence and their being, again, you have someone who's so just immediate in the sense of his anger based on the context, and then someone who's just as calm as could be. It's so good, that contrast, and just their actors are perfect for it. I don't know. I was pretty taken with it from the beginning, just as far as you had this, the incongruous score that kicked in and then like before you even have much of a chance to settle into that, the first, you know, on-screen killing happens, the guy beating his wife, whoever, with the lead pipe. Mm-hmm. There's just something so chilling about that, where rather than almost having this, you know, I don't know, that kind of music cue gives you the sense of like safety, or you know what you're in for. So it's just like right on all these themes we're talking about. It's perfect, because you go, okay, I have this context that's supposed to put me in a certain place. I know what this context means. It doesn't mean someone's going to get killed this way. And then when it happens, it just breaks you right into it. It's like during hypnotism, it's like that sort of the thing that you do at the beginning to get someone off kilter. It's like the movie at the way beginning puts us in that susceptible state, like a real hypnotism act.
And just the, like you said, the incongruity of it all. That's the whole movie. The whole movie is like, you know, undercutting the expectation or the thing that you're used to, and being like, yeah, sorry, you don't get that. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Sorry. And it makes you insane.
It does. Especially makes Takabe and maybe you insane, makes me insane.
Yeah.
This whole movie, just all the repercussions of like identity and I mean, yeah, we've already said it all, but I just love that kind of way, that those kind of rabbit holes it sends me down.
I have a question about setting because I have not been to Japan and you have. So a lot of the exterior shots have this quality to them in terms of like the architecture of what we're looking at that seems pretty run down. I can't remember what building it is that they pull up to at one point, but it looks like, it looks like a building that was maybe made in the 50s ish. I guess it could be 40s, 50s. It's got that architecture to it, but it is run down. I mean, it looks like out here, a contemporary building to that time out here that's just been abandoned forever. And I kept thinking, like, is this it's got to be a design choice to be filming there. But is that true to the buildings that those spaces actually were in Japan? So in other words, like, I think they pull up to the building I'm thinking of, I think maybe was the psych ward, maybe. And it just looked grim. I mean, it looked really dilapidated.
Yeah. So, I mean, in general, and I, can't speak to it that well, my memory is that it's like anywhere here, here in LA, it's just depends on,
okay.
it's runs the whole gamut. But as far as that ward specifically, I remember in one of the interviews, I'm pretty sure that it was like intentionally made to be worse than it was.
Okay. Because my take was this is by design, that they're finding locations that fit into this design without maybe going too far into unbelievability.
I think it was when you look at like even the when he goes to Mamiya's apartment and how run down that is. I mean, at the end when you have the puddles on the floor, I mean, it all feels pretty intentional.
Yeah. Okay. So having said that, I particularly like that aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
This, like, I mean, to bring up Seven again, like, it's doing a very similar thing that Seven does. It's saying, like, this is the world we live in, and like all the cracks are showing, right? Like the stains from years of just neglect or just not like trying to keep things pristine is showing. And everything has that patina to it. And I think that the use of that or the design of that puts us again into this state of sort of futile, maybe nihilistic, but certainly despair and like it's just never going to get better feeling, which I think is really, really, mesmerizing, so to speak.
Right.
In particular, the shot where he drops his wife off at the psych ward and it's outside, but they're underneath a walkway. So there's an awning essentially that runs the length of the walkway. But like the posts that are holding that awning up are just like rusted out, like metal, thin metal. There's piping, like industrial piping that's all rusted out and corroded. That's like running from the roof of that awning around the corner. And it just looks like a horrible place to be dropping your wife off at.
Yeah.
And I love that in that scene, it's daylight. We're outside. Like, in theory, these are things that evoke kind of a pleasant thing. And it's doing both because it's, and there's foliage and stuff around, but there's also just this brutally dark kind of like dilapidated feeling as well. And the doctor turns to him and he's like, "You look more sick than she is."
Right.
And it's just like all of these things are working so well to continue to get us in this sort of this feeling of like nothing's ever going to get better.
Well, that's that's so interesting putting it that way in the historical context you mentioned earlier of pre 9/11, where like before, like now it seems like, okay, we get, and this is speaking in like the very, again, just like sheltered Western world, United States world, you get what we're referring to, the safety of the suburbs, all that. It's, how do I put it? It's like, I don't know, it's a different kind of depressing. Now it feels like we are aware of how everything is horrible more. So it feels like there's this active fight going on.
Yes.
And the problem is you have some people being like, oh, well, we got to put the feathers in our hat pointing to the left. And then the people say, no, we got to, swing from vines in order to solve this problem. And it's just like, and they get super extreme anyway. So it's like this whole different other kind of thing where the pre 9/11, it seemed like this malaise of just sort of this, it's like this forced acceptance that, oh, everything is okay.
And will never not be okay.
Yeah.
This is why I think the movie thematically is doing a really great job. That is the macro sort of thematic reality.
Mm-hmm.
But the movie, the plot, the actual character plot is doing the same thing in a micro way, right? Like the villain is a hypnotist. But the world is living in hypnosis already.
Yeah.
And that's such a cool, like, back and forth to play around with and live in, because we're like, oh shit. Like,
right.
Is he really the villain, or is society the villain? Which is something that is said specifically at one point.
Right.
So I just think those are all really cool themes, and like it's sort of firing on the right cylinders or whatever you want to call it.
It's the best. I think this movie was incredible.
Yeah.
But let's see. I think if there's anything not so incredible, unless you have anything else.
The only other thing is the pulling off of the face.
Oh, yeah.
Was right up my alley. I was like, oh man, is she really going to pull that skin off? And then they just full on go for it. And I'm like, whoa, yeah. Hello.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on the carving of the X's much, but that's just this whole other...
Well, we don't see it. We don't see the actual carving ever, do we? The actual act of carving?
Maybe a glimpse of it one time?
Yeah. We see it. I think there's a really cool scene where they're interrogating the cop, and he grabs I don't even know what he grabbed. It's hard to tell, but it was like a stirrer for his coffee or something. It's like a little stick. And then he becomes he gets back into his little trance like state, and the detective says to the cop who's, whatever, it's like making sure the guy doesn't do anything. He's like, just let him be, like, let him, don't do anything. Don't stop him, because this is important. And we watch the cop who's committed the crime kind of in a trance walk over to this other cop and like draw the X with this stir stick or whatever it is on him. But I don't feel like, and it's really eerie because you're just thinking, well, at least I was just sitting there going like, the suspense of this is like right at the top, because I don't know exactly what he's holding. I'm like, if that's like a wooden stick, like he might just stab the guy in the eyeball or in the ear hole or like in the throat with it. Like, we don't know what's coming. And so it's really effective in that sense. And then he just does this weird eerie thing of just drawing the X along the guy's throat where every other victim has been killed. And the unpredictable madness of it is really scary to me. Like when you're out in the world and you see somebody just behaving unusual, it's really scary, because you go, oh shit, I can't predict in any way what this person is going to do.
Right. So that's what's so incredible when it flips it toward the end. You have the characters who are drawing the X's and don't have a memory of doing it.
Right.
So, I mean, how is that fear different from you? Or how's it different from you than when you're able to sort of almost, even though you don't feel safe, you're able to apply it more safely to someone else, that fear of someone being unpredictable. But there's something so interesting when it's like, okay, all of a sudden you've just had a mirror turned on you that you did something that you have no explanation for, drawing the X's or killing these people.
Ooh, that's terrifying.
Because then in that theory, that Tim should apply that same fear, you know?
Well, and I think that's the scary element of this story that it's really saying. It's like nobody's really safe. We're all already hypnotized.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh.
I loved Mamiya tapping on Takabe's head.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I also, I have one other visual too. The ceiling above Takabe saturating.
Yeah.
And like droplets starting to form, and then seeing the water dripping onto the lighter was, the way that is shot was just so cool.
Yeah.
And unsettling.
Oh yeah. That was incredible.
So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for me. I love the way that cell is lit. Like the foreground is all sort of in this green hue, and then the background where there is one light where the bathroom area is.
It's like the light, you see just the half of the bulb.
Yeah. Very, very unsettling.
Yeah, it was good to settle in for that incredible long take with it there.
Dude.
Yeah.
There was a moment when what was it that happened? It was early on. There was a semi-long take on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And Takabe puts his cigarette out in an ashtray and like kind of misses. And so then it's on the ground, but they dismiss it. Like they don't like acknowledge it in any way. And I'm thinking, man, from a filmmaking perspective, like you're doing these long takes. For something like that, which maybe was just a sort of a mistake, like the cigarette was supposed to end up in the ashtray, but didn't. Do you cut and you say, can we start over again? Because they were way far into the long take by then. And I was like, I guess you just say, nah.
Oh, man.
Who cares? Who's looking at the cigarette? We're looking at him.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
It just caught my eye and I was like, oh, okay, what's going on there? But
all right.
Yeah, the long takes are pretty ridiculous.
Yes, all is to say.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see if there's anything not so ridiculous.
Ooh, okay.
In our next section, what did not work?
It's not ready yet.
Seems to work okay.
No, something important's missing.
What did not work?
God, I mean, this is an incredible film. I don't know. You got to tell me what might have been holding you back.
It's weird because I think this happens somewhat often with me, in that the sit down experience of watching it is way less enjoyable than the discussion about it.
I mean, does it have to do with little things like your internet going out? I mean,
well, that was very annoying.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's really how big of an impact that has.
This just seemed like your
kept
cup of
feeling
tea.
like nothing. I kept, maybe it's an expectation thing.
Mm-hmm.
I kept thinking we were going to get some bigger thing, like some bigger, like ramping up. And then so in the moment, I'm kind of waiting for a thing, which then, my expectations aren't sort of met because I'm thinking about a different thing than what the movie is. And then the movie ends and I'm like, oh, I'm almost disappointed. But then I think about the movie and I'm like, well, that's not the movie, right? The movie that actually exists is doing another thing for the purpose of making you feel maybe like to undercut your expectations in the first place. Like that's like the theme of the movie.
I mean, that's why.
And so in that sense, It's like it's great.
Yeah.
But did I enjoy watching it that much?
I mean, I was flirting
yes
more.
And no.
I was flirting more with a buy after, I had to I had to watch it again because we first watched it and then didn't record.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want to watch it again, but I have to. I don't remember. I had to talk about this. But I split that up into two viewings. It was raining when I started it, kind of just getting dark.
Yeah.
I don't know. like hearing you talk about the first viewing experience is always how I try to catch myself with so many movies we've watched, as far as the like, okay, now that I know what it is, I think I would like it a lot better the second time, because you just have all these weird expectations. I don't even know why I have them.
Right. I didn't go in knowing anything about the movie. So why am I even... I think it's like you're getting set up. Well, I'm often, I think, analyzing where I think it's going. Mm-hmm. Because that's part of the fun for me, especially with a detective story. Right? That to me is that's what I like about them, is getting on the ride of the like whodunit and trying to figure out whether I can stay ahead of the story. And when it's subverted, usually that's good. But it honestly may just be this circular talking that is the villain's like mode is so annoying to me in life. Like it like made me mad. I was like, God damn, that this is what this guy has to contend with.
I feel like I maybe identified more with Mamiya and you identified more with the cop.
Probably. Yeah, that tracks between the two of us. So yeah, I just was like, oh, this motherfucker.
I was frustrated at their frustration.
Yeah.
Where I was just like, well, clearly you got to change your tactic, dude. Like,
but if I'm really being like, okay, trying to be really honest with how the arc of the movie goes, I think what it is it's almost too bleak for me, which is crazy to say because I love bleakness, but the real climax of the movie is that interrogation in the cell scene where he finally gets, where presumably Takabe gets hypnotized fully. And then the rest of the movie is interesting to me, but I almost feel like it just fell kind of away. Rather than like ramping to a thing. Like I did not feel, and I get it, this is like the point of the way it's made is not to feel cathartic about the ending. And so like, I don't know.
It's about, I feel like it's you looking at it with the lens of like the hypnotism metaphor of being put under a spell, and almost that's like the arc and even the sort of feel of the ending. Where I feel you with the sort of just like the bleakness kind of is that in itself can be a hit or miss thing for me. It's got to be doing something more than that. Which is why I think like Seven is a masterpiece, a great film, but it's just not one of my favorites at all. And I think why I like this one way, way more, I think it did so much just having that little bit of like flirting with the supernatural. In this one, where we had the sort of the shaking telekinesis desks, and then later on too, when he's freaking out trying to escape the jail and like different parts are doing that. And then you have at one point that one who knows more about the doctor guy, the detective's talking to, he says something when he's talking about Mesmer, saying Mesmer, so there's something like, rumors that he may have been dealing more with like explicit kind of like magic with a K, occult stuff.
Yeah.
So yet we have totally, but then they're talking about hypnotism as sort of like, but this was before hypnotism was accepted as a medical mode to do these things, whatever. So it was just so interesting to have like this hypnotism, which is accepted by like modern science, whatever, Western thinking, and then as a bridge to this bit that's just seems next to it. So it's just being able to have that like little bit of a is it, isn't there connection to the supernatural is sort of what helped put me in that sort of like spell state of it all, and just why I don't know, I think part of why I loved it so much.
Okay. I think maybe part of what I'm responding to in not quite being able to get in is that for most of the movie, I'm on board with Takabe. But there's a point when he starts to become unreliable. And I think why Seven as a movie works so well is that we are always grounded to Morgan Freeman's character. He's like, he's the main character of the movie, in spite of us kind of feeling like Brad Pitt is.
See, I'm like, where's the fun in that?
Well, I'm not saying it has to be fun.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that it's an anchor for us. It's an anchor for us to see the madness reflected back. Right? He gets to say, yeah, the world is horrible.
And what I was saying was more like, where's the fun in anchors all the time? That's what I mean.
I agree. I don't think it needs to be fun. I know what you're saying, but I think that the third act may have felt, watching Takabe spiral while still having somebody to reflect that off of, may have made me feel more grounded to like the tragedy of it. But without that anchor, I kind of felt, I don't know, like nothing is reliable anymore.
Well, it's interesting to compare it to Audition again, where that one went like so off the wheels as far as like realities and remembering moments. So
yes.
I liked that to that extent. This one I thought was sort of on the opposite end, where it still felt like nothing was wrong. You just had more of these little clues that was like, okay, you could also interpret this as some other, as the unreliable narrator, yada, yada. But it still felt so like straight-laced enough for me to have that anchoring you're talking about, where it's just like, yeah, it's still detective story. He's going to get the bad guy. It never strayed from that for me.
No, but okay. So maybe what I'm responding to that's making me not quite get in is that I think it's too middle of those two extremes.
That's why I didn't see it as a middle. I saw it as a not doing, as the low end of the spectrum.
Sure. Because I could see a version where we get into that third act and we presume that Takabe has been hypnotized, but we're not sure yet. That whole third act can be like a ramp up where it just gets crazier and crazier and crazier until the point we go, oh shit, all of what we've just watched is him under the influence of the hypnosis, that it's all this like dreamlike thing, and that could ramp up. But it never really cranks in that way. And intentionally, I know that's not what they're trying to do. But I think I would have gotten on board more with that, either that version or the version where we're grounded to somebody else watching Takabe spiral and trying to rein him back in futilely, ultimately. Both of those versions, I think, would be more potent for how I like, where I want a story to go. Mm-hmm. This one just stayed right in the same level, and I'm going, I'm waiting for a thing. And I'm not saying that it's bad, but it effectively doesn't work for me because I prefer the craze, the extremes, either one. And this sort of stays in this, it's like the metronome doesn't slow down or speed up.
Well, if you had someone,
I'm not saying it's bad.
If you had someone else there to be more of a different perspective grounding it, then it just wouldn't be doing the unreliable narrator thing like at all. Yeah,
that's true.
So that's why I like that little bit that it was at.
Yeah. You're right. I do think you're right in also that if I were to watch it again, I could let go of all of that.
Yeah.
And just be like, yep.
So would you watch it again?
I think so. I mean, it's certainly not an avoid by any means.
Right. I think you should check out Pulse, and then that will make you want to see this again.
Yeah, I'd have to look. I don't think I've seen Pulse.
Well, maybe we could do it in the future.
Cool.
All right. Well, let's see if there's some things of note here. How about?
I'm into it.
All right. Here we go. Things of note.
This should be interesting.
So the guy who played Mamiya, Masato Hagiwara, did he look super familiar to you?
I don't think so.
I couldn't place it, but then I looked to see if I'd seen anything else he's been in. He's been in stuff, and I've seen zero of his films, so I don't know. But he's really like that quality that he has is really cool and unsettling. And I'm curious now. I want to see what he's like in other stuff.
Well, if you're curious about Mr. Masato Hagiwara, then I can recommend the interview with him. That's a special feature.
That would be interesting.
It was really interesting. So he approached the project being super insecure. He was basically saying no to the project, saying like,
"Whoa,
I can't do it." I mean, they're basically he did. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. He basically did see it as he was being asked to be the Hannibal Lecter to the Jodie Foster. And just could not deal with that kind of pressure. So his agents, whoever, said, just at least meet with the director. And the director told him, I don't want you to be on equal level. So that just, even though you clearly see he is, it took the pressure off.
Yeah.
And then he said, and all I'm going to ask you to do, we aren't even going to talk about the movie, whatever. I just want you as you. You just worry about showing up on set. And then so he'd never get direction that was more than like just look around the room, walk around the room. That's
great.
So it was so funny to hear him talking about it, Masato Hagiwara. He said it as if the director hypnotized him during the shoot, just to make the fun, obvious comparison. Yeah. So like even when the interviewer asked like, so that tapping on the head, like I love that. It's such a great moment. He's like was like, I can't remember that. He like for the life of him couldn't remember how that came to be. But he said it must have just been based on the general direction he knew he was getting, that he just felt like doing it, so did it.
Damn, that's awesome.
Yeah. And even, I kind of mentioned earlier, him on the beach, it sounded like it might have been one of the first shoots, but they were just like, walk over there, then come and walk back and stand there for a bit. And so when we first see him, he said he was literally just like enjoying the breeze, and that's it. That's all he was thinking about.
Hey, honestly, that like as an acting technique, perfect. Yeah. That's what you want. Think less. Just exist.
Right. And then more on, I guess, kind of the acting style. Then there's, a conversation too with the other actor. Sorry, we have their names right here.
I just had it too.
Koji Yakusho as Takabe.
Who's amazing.
So good. So he mentioned what was interesting was there was basically that the director did not want any rehearsals. So much of that sort of tension. Yeah, he was saying a lot of the tension came from an almost like nervous energy or anticipation from like doing that long take, you'd say, with like no rehearsals, that he just really did want, what they say the benefits of no rehearsals can be, which is a certain freshness to it all. So interesting to see how that applies to this story, especially.
Yeah. Well, speaking of him, He's been in some really good stuff.
Oh yeah?
I've seen, I don't know. I mean, just the first 4 that come up: 13 Assassins, which is a fine movie. Shall We Dance, which is amazing. Babel, which I never finished because it wasn't my thing, but got a lot of praise.
Yep.
And I remember him from it. He's great. Memoirs of a Geisha he's into. He's in a bunch of stuff, but those are the big, probably Western movies that we know about. But yeah, he's awesome, dude. Crushing it.
And he had previously worked with Kiyoshi Kurosawa, the director, and went on to work with him more. And it was interesting how this Kurosawa, not Akira, but Kiyoshi Kurosawa got his start, where he was directing what they called like V films or something like that, but basically direct to video, their term for that in Japan. So like he had just made like, I forget what it was called, like Super Cop 1 and 2 or something sounding that. And went to this company to make 3 and 4 of whatever this was for this V series. and had also had the story idea for Cure. So when he presented that to this company, they got really excited about it. And before he knew it, it just kind of ballooned to a full-on bigger budget thing.
Damn.
Yeah. It was interesting to hear too about the response at the time, which was like, he said people liked it a lot, but only were really just sort of in the mode of following the story, and that's it. And as far as all the more filmmaking aspects and the sort of weirder under your skin aspects to it, seemed like kind of wasn't on a lot of people's radar at the time.
Huh. Okay.
Almost, I don't know, an example of these films, the tried and true films, sort of standing the test of time, though.
Yeah.
And then some also just fun examples of serendipity on this film's side, where that beach scene, they kept holding off shooting that day because the weather kept changing. And then they were finally just like, all right, we got to embrace it. So, I mean, they have those beautiful establishing shots where you see the weather changing visually from a cloud, like gray to brighter.
Yep.
And then that's sort of then, I don't know, that all is so effective for what's going on in it.
I wonder too if they connected that to the bus shots too, if that was originally in the design of how they were depicting that back of the bus where the cloud. I mean, that's such a weird shot.
It felt like they were on their way to heaven or something.
Exactly. I was like, are they on a gondola? Like, where are they?
Yeah.
It was so bizarre, but I wonder if that was informed by the beach shoot.
Yeah, it'd be interesting how they came up with that. They didn't talk about that. But yeah, it just talked about how the weather, like they didn't have the means to fastidiously wait or plan around the weather. So just everything that worked out so perfect weather-wise with the wind, rain,
when do you ever have
and sun,
the ability to play with the weather?
Big budgets. You don't play with the weather.
You just
wait.
You make it.
You wait. You whatever reschedule. But yeah, just knowing how key the weather was and just as a motif and mood for all this, that it worked out perfect was a lot of fun. It's kind of interesting. He said for the lighter, I think it was for the first hospital scene, or is the first scene where the puddle is in effect the hypnotism device, where that originally wasn't in the script or wasn't there originally, but I guess they figured he wouldn't be allowed to light the lighter in the hospital or something like that.
Fair.
Or something about it didn't make sense. So when trying to think of another version of what it could be, that's when they came up with the water thing, which just, of course, fit perfectly. Came back later when it was raining. Is just all meant to be. And then last on some more ridiculous stuff, but the there's a video essay called "There Is No Cure," video essay by Alexandre O. Philippe, which I've recommended before. He's the one who made the Psycho shower scene documentary, 78 over 52.
Yep.
And he just went into that like ridiculous observation of detail that's, well, ridiculous, but it's kind of fun too at the same time, where right at the beginning, when he's just basically talking up about the mood that the opening scene puts you in and all that, he specifies you see right after the table shake, there is 44 frames of the doctor's notes, and that they're in German, his notes, which is Mesmer's language.
Oh, okay.
And then that you see words sort of like in German, but can kind of make out disorientation and schizophrenia, words like that.
Okay.
So,
we didn't really talk about the Mesmer thing because I think it's cool, but it doesn't really make a big difference in the plot or anything. It is a cool historic, I assume it's historically accurate, right? It's like where we get the term mesmerizing.
It is. Yeah. No, it's a real deal as far as real dude and real technique and all that stuff.
Have you ever seen somebody get hypnotized?
I don't know. I want to say yes.
When I was in
I watched you remember in Hellier, they had that great hypnotism scene.
Oh, yeah.
Where they hypnotized an abduction into someone.
Right. When I was in high school, it was like our senior year, they had a hypnotist come.
That's when I saw it was like our weird safe and sober grad night thing, but it just seemed like it was all kind of kitschy.
It was, except for the fact that they pulled my best friend up on stage, who is the absolute last person on the planet who would go along with this. And they, I mean, he doesn't even claim to remember much of this, but the hypnotist got him to get up in front of the entire school, whom he hated, right? Like he was not like a social guy, and got him to sing Mary Had a Little Lamb as an opera singer in front of the entire class.
Did everyone applause?
Everybody was completely beside themselves. They're like, there's no way that he's doing this. Like this, it was so out of the ordinary for him, which made me go, oh, well, I mean, I guess maybe there's something to it, because there's no way he would have done that. Like he wouldn't have gone along with it.
Right.
It was wild.
I've like looked into it a bit. It was interesting. My dad, who's like super straight-laced Western medicine doctor, all that, he he had all these books on his shelves, and he had some on hypnotism. I'm like, Dad, what are you doing with this? And it's like, oh, I just got into hypnotism for a while. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You got into it? So
Did you get out?
So yeah. So he's done it. So I've asked him about it in
That's
the past. Yeah. But then mentioning Mesmer, I just want to mention again, or mention it all. I loved in this film how just what you were saying about him. I like that they didn't get into it too much. There was no like kind of exposition scene that went too far.
Yeah.
In fact, what was so great, the little touch that we do have of him when they're looking at him in the book, is when you see his picture and it's completely like blanked out. It's It's like you barely make out his eyes and nose and mouth, and they don't even know what year he was born. I mean, yeah, exactly. Creepy. It was great.
just like these little notes of let's make it a little ambiguously freaky and weird, and whether or not any of that is accurate, who cares?
Right.
Just adding to the mystique.
That's perfect. All this.
Okay, so I have one last question.
Yes.
Why is it called Cure?
I was thinking about it like,
or which I didn't look up. Is there another translation of the title?
I don't think so. I remember they were talking about cure, like cure.
But it's not called The Cure. But why? I don't get it.
I'd see it as like something where it's something where you can't be cured from, was sort of where I started going with it.
Okay.
And sort of the frustration in the face of that. And just sort of, when you're talking about things on these like hypnotism, metaphysical level, like what's wrong with his wife, what's wrong with the main dude, it's sort of like incurable in a way.
Is that how you spell cure in terms of the act of curing? Like where do you use this term? Wow. Is it too early? I didn't have enough coffee, I think. When you cure leather or like a material.
It's the same spelling.
It is.
But probably a different numbered bullet point in the definition.
But exactly. I'm wondering if there's some, because that's in English, right? Like like we have multiple meanings for this word in English. And so I just am wondering if there is double or layered meaning to the word that they're using in Japanese. And I just don't know.
That would have been,
it doesn't say, like, nothing I've seen says so I don't know.
Report back to us next time.
Okay, I'll go down a rabbit hole.
Great. All right. Well, I think that's it then for Cure, whatever that may or may not mean.
Yeah.
From 1997, primo year for all this dread, all this rainy dread.
Yeah.
Great. Let's wind down with some quick RecommenDEADtions for us and everyone here.
Well, man, I've watched a couple of things that I was hopeful for that just, they're just not good enough to recommend dead. So that bums me out. So that got me thinking about this actor, the lead, Koji. And I think I had completely forgotten about the movie Shall We Dance.
I haven't seen it.
It is so good. I remember watching it at my friend Rumsey Aboud's house.
Rumsey Aboud?
Aboud.
Rumsey
Aboud.
Rumsey Aboud.
Yeah. Well, it's Ramsey, but it's like he always described it, and he's like, white people can't say the vowel sound that his name is supposed to have. So he just was like, it's just Rumsey, just whatever.
Okay.
But it's Ramzi. Shout out. What's up, dude? He like, I remember his like, we were hanging out at his place and his parents were like, we're going to watch this movie. And we were like, oh man, like we probably wanted to watch whatever. I don't know what would have been out at that point, but Mortal Kombat or something horrible.
Dude, that movie's great.
And his parents were like, no, you should watch this. It'll be good for you. It's like, it's a foreign film. It's like not the shit that you guys usually watch. And it, 96, we probably watched it in 97. It was like on HBO or something. They were the only family I knew that had HBO. And I was completely taken by it. I think it was one of the early times when I was like, oh man, I'm missing out a lot because I had very little exposure to foreign films at that point. So my 17, 18-year-old self was like, holy shit, this is amazing. Like, is there more of this out there? So yeah, you like go watch Shall We Dance.
Is it
so good?
A drama? What is it?
It is a drama. The easiest version of the story, because it's pretty in depth, like is that there's like an accountant guy who gets into like ballroom dancing.
Okay, cool.
And it like completely turns his world upside down in like good and bad ways and whatever.
That sounds good.
It's really cool.
Great. I will check it out. I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Rumsey's parents.
Paula and Camille.
I'm going to recommend Dead, the original Mortal Kombat. No,
oh my God. I saw that 5 times in the theater.
Well, that was the best, Tim. I don't know how you can call it shitty.
It's horrible.
It's so
but
good.
It was like perfect for my 17-year-old self or whatever.
I rewatched it leading up to when that new one came out, which was terrible, I think.
Yeah.
I thought, and I don't know, I had so much fun with it. The effects, the kitschiness is so good. Well, here's this speaks to why I like the original Mortal Kombat, my recommendation here. I'm going to recommend Dead. Alien from L.A. from 1988, directed by Albert Pyun, rest in peace, recently passed away, starring Kathy Ireland, speaking in a ridiculous voice the whole film. So I was... Vinegar Syndrome was celebrating their 10th anniversary by doing 10 days of 10 movies for sale for $10.
Okay.
And I was like, anything I want here? And the movie caught my eye, and someone explained it as, it reminded me of the Super Mario Brothers movie,
which you love.
I love, Tim. I love it. And I got it and watched it with my friend, and I did love it. It was great. So we have Kathy Ireland is taken from
I didn't
LA.
know she ever did a movie.
She tracks down her father, who may be dead, some place across the world in a plane ride that's just like one shot of her. It's great. And she travels underground to this whole civilization that's just like a weird underground people civilization. And it's got a little repetitive or whatever, but just the sort of fun, like futuresque apocalyptic design of it all that was so unique, and just her performance cracked me up, and just all these great little design elements. It hit my sweet spot. I loved it. And that's Albert Pyun, kind of want to check him out. He did like Doll Man and what's some other like killer cop type or like monster cop movie kind of thing. I forget, we're RoboCop, but not RoboCop, like a RoboCop. Anyway,
Wolf Cop?
Not Wolf Cop. But movies like that, they're kind of these C-grade movies that have a great spirit to them. So I wanted to start checking out his stuff. So it worked out that way too.
Isn't it amazing how many movies get made?
Yes.
It's amazing.
And that one was Alien from LA. Just tickles me so much. Check it out.
Damn.
All right. Well, I think that's it then.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we didn't have too much of a short-term memory loss this episode. Yeah. It's appropriate, just the regular amount. So so in closing, I'm glad we didn't have too much of a short-term memory loss for this episode.
Yeah, that'd be weird.
And we'll see you next time.
No, we'll see you next time.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for listening.
And we'll see you next time.
Goodbye.